What's up, YouTube? This is Mad Eye Yokai with a special interview with Randy Greenback, the executive producer at GunMedia, the company designing Friday the 13th, the game. Before I start, I want to say that this was recorded in the hallway of PAX East, so there is a little bit of background noise, which I did my best to filter out. Also, this is a sample of my future podcast for my website and blog, madigames.com. The purpose of this podcast is to show people what it takes to make a video game, what goes on behind the scenes, and how to break into the industry. This podcast is still in development, but I want to make you, the viewer, benefit as much as possible. So, if there are any questions you would like me to ask for future interviews, or if you have any ideas for questions, please write them in the comments below and I'll respond and try to put them in for the final launch. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoy. So, Randy Greenback, thank you so much for giving me some time to interview you on Friday the 13th, the game. I really appreciate it.
No problem. You're welcome.
A couple questions for you. Question one. How long have you been a part of the video game industry, and what is your primary role in the development of the game?
I've been in the industry for about 23 years now.
Wow.
As far as Friday the 13th is concerned, I am the executive producer. But, you know, I also contribute ideas for design and thoughts on pretty much anything, but that is my main forte.
So what does an executive producer do at GunMedia?
So basically just you need to ensure that things are getting done on time and everything's kind of on budget and on target. I don't know, like I also ran the Kickstarter, for instance.
Really? That was you?
Yeah, I pretty much ran the whole Kickstarter, you know, as far as day-to-day and with Ronnie and Ben and Wes. So that was crazy, and then Ilphonic was supporting us with content to show, videos and screenshots. So it was really a big team effort, but I have been supporting projects on Kickstarter since Kickstarter began. I have supported over 100 projects, so when it was time for us to Kickstarter, I felt like I had a good understanding of what worked on Kickstarter and also like just what people expect a game to do. And one of the big things I wanted to do during the Kickstarter and after was be very transparent about the game development for everybody who backed it, but also just for anybody that wants to know more about how games are made and how challenging they are to actually get done.
And just to go off of that, what made your company decide to be so open with the public on social media? Because I've known that game companies don't usually talk to fans and people who are curious about the game so frequently as Friday the 13th does. And so I'm curious, like, what made you decide to be so open, and how many hours per day are you engaging social media with fans and interviews and all that stuff?
What made us decide to be open about the game? Well, we just think that it's kind of refreshing when companies are open with fans and transparent with how things are going on in development. It rarely happens, so that's why it is refreshing, and I think that's why people appreciate it so much. It's really hard getting excited about a game that's coming from a faceless giant corporation.
True.
You know, who puts out like a spin story here and there, and then every once in a while they'll give you one update, but it's very reserved. They don't give a lot of media with it. So we were like, well, we want to have a human face on Gun, and we want to everybody to know there's a real team full of real people working on the game. So all of us get involved in on Twitter and on various social media, Facebook, whatnot. And we're not active on it all day, except for like Ben who is working on the game as community manager and associate producer. He's there. That's his job. But all of us, we dabble in it because we have other things we have to do, but we do want to interact with our fans and with people who just are into the game or anybody who has a question or a concern, so we can kind of like keep abreast of what people are thinking and talking about, but also just to ensure that if anybody does have a problem, that we can actually resolve it, or we can at least tell them why something's happening the way it is.
So like why you guys made this decision versus like why, although a fan may want this in the game, why that won't work for your design.
Or why it won't work because of the IP holder.
IP holder?
Like the people who own Friday the 13th, like they have a say in everything that happens.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, if we say Jason's going to wear a tutu, or somebody says, why doesn't Jason wear a tutu? We have to go, well, I think it could be perfectly fine, you know, in the game that he could wear it, but I don't think it would be good for the brand or for Jason, the character. I don't think that's the way that the people who own that want to see him portrayed, because it kind of sullies what he's about.
The terrifying image.
Yeah, the terrifying image. So there's stuff like that that does have to go up the chain, and we usually know the answer though. Like we know as much about the franchise and the films and the characters as much as anybody, but so we can kind of guess, hey, they're not going to be cool with that, but we'll run it up anyways, and it almost always comes back down as like, yeah, we were right, but sorry, we can't do it.
I've heard the story several times that you guys got the rights to Friday the 13th for free, which is amazing. But even so, there are limitations with what you're allowed to do, what you're allowed to change, and you still have to talk with the creator of Jason Voorhees.
Oh yeah, everything has to fit with the brand. Otherwise, we can't do it. And also, it's complex as far as how the rights have been chopped up and carved up for all the characters in all the different films. I mean, Paramount used to make the movies. WB's been involved. You know, like there's so many other companies that have been involved at different times that it's hard to know who owns what and who has say-so on what decision. And there's some characters we don't have access to. Like, we just can't use because we don't have the rights to that specific character because that was in a film produced by somebody else and funded by somebody else and then published by somebody else.
Could you give an example of a character? Just like a name?
I mean, like, we don't own Crazy Ralph. We don't own...
Really?
We can't... Yeah, well, I mean, that's an actor's likeness. Like, we couldn't use him, for example, directly unless we get permission from his estate or whatever. So, likewise, like, there are some Jasons that are off limits as well. So, like, we've talked about, hey, we just... You know, we were thinking about doing, you know, Jason X or Freddy versus Jason, you know, Jason. But if we don't have the rights to use that specific Jason because a different film studio put that movie out, then we can't put it in the game.
Oh, so not only need to get the rights from the creator of Friday the 13th, we need to get rights from the certain film studios.
Yeah, it depends on how the IP and those characters have been carved out and put together, but yes.
And what does IP mean, just so people who are listening to this can get a better understanding?
IP is just, it's basically, it's short for, because there's two different ways you can refer to it as, but in different aspects. So, intellectual patent, intellectual property, or intellectual patent. So, in this case, it'd be intellectual property.
Intellectual property.
Because it's not patented.
Okay. Good to know, intellectual property. So, next question I have is more of like game design. So, you've always described Friday the 13th as an asymmetrical multiplayer horror game. Mm-hmm. And so what was the greatest challenge you faced as a team when separating how the counselors interact with the world versus how Jason interacts with the world?
It was fairly straightforward with how we were approaching it. I guess the biggest challenge is how much can the counselors do if they're not working towards one of the goals? Like, they can hide, but how good of a decision is it to hide? And there's certain places that you can hide, but you're pretty much stuck once Jason comes into the room, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of level design that has to go around making hiding spots like matter, and then also making them having multiple places so that Jason has to gamble on a couple of them and pick one so that maybe you can actually come out and run away, right? Because there's some rooms in the cabin during the beta, in some of the cabins that only had one hiding spot, and if Jason knew you went into that cabin,
you're done
and you know, oh, that's the only hiding spot, he just walks over and kills you. Yeah. So we want to avoid situations like that where people don't have a chance. They made a poor decision, but not because that hiding wasn't the right decision or the wrong decision. It's because the level, the cabin layout didn't support it properly. So that's not their fault. That's our fault. So, like, stuff like that is probably the most challenging because you don't think twice when you put a cabin together and it's like there's only one bed and it's just sitting right there and that's the only hiding spot in it. Well, it matters because Jason will open the door, sees somebody in there, looks around, there's nobody in there. Oh, there's only a bed, there's no armoire, there's no second bed. Well, let me go stab the bed.
Yeah.
Because that's where they are.
I also remember one time I was playing the beta, and there was only one window, and it was right next to the front door.
Yeah.
To the back room, and there were no windows.
It's stuff like that. When you're putting it together, you don't think twice about it. Yeah. But when you're actually playing a game and somebody's complaining about it, or you yourself are stuck, Jason's coming, and you're like, wait, he just came through the door. I can run to the window next to the door and die, or I can try to run through him out the door. Either way is a bad idea. It's like we clearly need another window.
Pick your poison, basically, right?
Yeah.
So, another question about game design. What was the most difficult part about designing Friday the 13th, and what did you learn from it? How did you overcome that challenge?
Balance, like balancing the game. speed-wise, stats-wise, there's different counselors that have different attributes and that need to fit a certain archetype. So like Vanessa Jones, she's the athletic girl. She needs to run fast. She also needs, relatively high stamina, right? But if we push her too far, all of a sudden she's running circles around Jason, making Jason look like a fool, and Jason can't catch her. So we had to tweak a lot of the stats and introduce things for counselors that are really adept, counselor players that are really adept at dodging and juking Jason. We basically gave Jason throwing knives to counter that, so that we didn't have to ruin the archetypes and wholly change the way they play for those specific counselors. We just gave Jason the ability to counteract it if they're trying to.
So were throwing knives a later addition then? Was that all?
Yeah, that was definitely not in the beta, and that was added later. We talked about it, but that was added after beta.
Okay, so you guys
specifically that became a stronger mandate because of the feedback that we received during the beta from players that were having issues with players who were playing as Vanessa that were really good at dodging.
Yeah. I remember I played with Vanessa a little bit when I was first starting out because she was the fastest. She was able to dodge more. And
she could run forever, too.
Yeah.
Like, pretty much.
Just, outrun Jason for, a good 6 minutes before getting tired. And then one of the last questions I have for you is, it's more for you.
Okay.
Is there anything you wish people would ask you about the game that hasn't really been talked about yet, or something that's been overlooked that you would like to share with everyone?
Wow, honestly, no. The only thing I wish that people wouldn't ask about is the release date over and over again. You guys got hundreds of requests. Yeah, we answer it as honestly as we can and as open as we can every time. But when the answer doesn't change, people get upset. Like when it doesn't get more specific, people get upset. So everybody's asked a lot of really great questions about the game from the start time it was summer camp till now. So there's not a lot on the gameplay side that to talk about on that front. But yeah, as far as the question we get the most often, that is not necessarily the most annoying, but the most trying is the launch date question, because we cannot give a specific launch date yet. Small team going through console certification. Until we get past that, we don't know when we can launch. So we can't give anybody a date. So not that you've asked that, but just in general.
Just in general. And thank you for being so patient with all the fans and hundreds of requests, and especially you.
No, it's not their fault. I mean, that's not their job to know how hard it is to get through console certification with Microsoft and PlayStation and Sony. But it's not their fault that they don't know that. Yeah. I mean, they're not in the game industry. They don't have to know that. So we can't blame anybody for them asking over and over again and wanting this information. We just wish there was a better way to convey it and make sure it was sticky and everybody knew it, so we didn't have to answer it 100 times a day.
And that's the point of this podcast, to introduce people who are listening for the first time, what it takes to build a game, the trials people have to face in order to make it a reality. And I think another thing people are curious about is, with your team being small, how do you mandate work? How do you say, okay, we're going to focus on art this day, we're going to do all right, 2 people focus on the next Jason skin, 3 people focus on coding? How do you divide the work? Or do you guys choose a certain task per day?
Man, yeah, everybody just kind of tackles what's in their domain and what's on the task list and schedule. So at Gun specifically, I do a lot of the backer kit stuff on the back end. Everybody has their own kind of area that they focus on, but we're ready to hop in and help each other on anything. So
you guys wear many hats, just like Battleslots, huh?
Just yeah, I would say so. We wear a lot of hats, but for good reason, and it actually works out. So if somebody's sick when thing X needs to be done, there's somebody else that can do it. It's not just that we can't get done, because that's a bad situation to be in. So It's better if everybody on the team knows a little bit about everything, as opposed to there's one person who's the only person that can do X, because now he's out for a week, and now what?
And last question for you is, do you have any recommendations for software or things aspiring game designers should check out if they're curious? Art or level design or anything?
I would suggest just reading up on game development in general. There's lots of online resources that you can check out. There's lots of places where you can get started with good tutorials. So if you want to learn art, or you want to learn how to program in Unity 5, you can go to a site like Udemy udemy.com, and actually download tutorials and learn how to make games using Unity. The cool thing these days is that that game engines are relatively free to use, as long as you're, if you're just trying to learn something or release a small game for not a huge game, then there's really no reason not to start, because you can download the game engine for free and start building, and you can launch the game, and until you make like 50,000 or whatever, you owe them nothing.
Exactly.
So why not do it? So
I'm a huge fan of Udemy myself. I think it's how you say it, Udemy.
Udemy? Yeah, it's Academy Udemy.
Yep, Academy Udemy. And I've used it to make Game Maker games, so definitely a great resource.
Yeah, Game Maker's good too. A lot of people, there's some people that look down on Game Maker because it's not 3D, but yeah, I think Game Maker's a great place to start as well. There's other good places like good engines like Construct 2. There's tons of them, but basically, if you have a tool that works for you and you can make games in it and you know it, then that is probably all you need.
Thank you very much, Randy. I appreciate your time.
No
and
problem.
Congratulations on surviving PAX East.
Thank you.
See you in the game.
See you in the game.